afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to each of you today to today's knowledge session hosted by KFintech Technologies Limited. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today. I am sure you all would agree that we are here at the center of action on this particular topic, that is ISIN process, DMAT, and corporate actions for AIFs. We believe that this is an apt time to take a small pause, understand the journey so far, the process, challenges, and expectations going forward. We will cover two relevant discussions here. First, the dematerialization of AIF units, which has been a hot topic, and the next steps, which was referred to in the SEBI circular dated 21st June 2023. We will talk about some of the successes and the nuances today. Second, dematerialization of underlying units of AIFs, as referred to SEBI board meeting press release recently on 25th November 2023. With this broad overview, I would now like to introduce our speaker for today, Satish HK, Senior Vice President and Head Corporate Registry at KFintech Technologies. Satish is a highly experienced professional and a subject matter specialist with regards to corporate registry industry with over 3 decades of experience across registry and transfer agency services. He also carries a lot of expertise on the IPO, post-IPO issuer services segment and retail investor relations. In his present role, his area of focus is on business development, project management, and client servicing. Prior to joining KFintech, Satish was associated with Hindustan Unilever Limited for over a decade, where he was handling retail investor relations and also taking care of various listing compliances. Before I hand over to Satish, kindly note that all participants are in listen-only mode today. We are happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation. Kindly use the chat box for any observations or questions. Over to you, Satish.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, Madhu, thanks for the introduction, and you have summed it up very well. So, this is the SEBI circular what Madhu has referred in her introduction. We are all know the circulars is now almost 6 months old, and most of the people who are in the room may be aware that most of them are already started the process. Some of them are already obtained the ISI and started the process with respect to DMAT of units, etc. So I'm just talking about the first hidden milestone which we already crossed on 31st of October, where all the 500 plus crore funds needs to obtain the ISI and send a communication to the investor asking for their DMAT account details, etc., which most of us are completed, and some of them are already started doing the corporate actions, etc., for credit of units, physical units to DMAT. But for the funds which are less than 500 CR, we have almost 2 to 3 months to go, exactly 188 days to go to comply with the entire requirements. That is why this particular session is important for them who have not started the process or started the process and not completed it and obtained the ISI. So one thing we need to understand, SEBI is very sure about this particular deadline because they have not changed any dates for the 500 plus crore club earlier. So there was an expectation, but they stick to the deadline and asked every AIFs to get the ISIN, though the DMAT was not mandated at that time, but the admission of the unit capital into the depository system was made mandatory. Going forward, as Madhu said, I'll just talk about the journey so far, what we had. KFin as an RTA providing connectivity services to the AIF industry. We have started this journey somewhere by end of July. And from then, we have already successfully onboarded 125 funds with NSDL and CDSL, obtained 8,000 plus ISINs as of now. Our core RTA team has already started communicating to the investors, asking them to the DMAT account details as well as the CML copies. Coming back to process of corporate actions, we have done process of corporate actions for physical to DMAT with NSDL and CDSL. We have also completed some of the corporate actions which involved fresh allocation of units, and also did some corporate actions where there were redemption of units involved. One thing to highlight is about Swami Fund, which completed all these corporate action, and currently they are having 100% DMAT. And this particular journey of Swami was, we were really proud to partner with the SBI Cap Ventures Limited, who's the investment manager, who could successfully do all the three activities and make 100% Demat unit in AIF. So I think most of you must have attended the previous sessions, what we had on Demat and admission, etc. But for the people who are not started the process, I'll just quickly make you go through the entire process involved. The first step is appointment of an RTA, which is a SEBI registered RTA. Appointment is mandatory for getting a connectivity. The AIF need to have a board approval for admission of Demat into NSDL and CDSL, and there is a specific requirement of mentioning appointment of RTA for this purpose. And some of the authorized signatories can be nominated in the board resolution so that they can execute all these documentations required for admissions into the Demat segment. So there are a set of documents which needs to be executed for this purpose, which I will take you through in the next coming slides. But there are post that completion of documents, we will be through the RTA, you will be able to send these documents to the depository. And one of the requirement in the document is a tripartite agreement where the RTA, the AIF, and the respective depository needs to execute this particular document, which is a tripartite agreement, which need to be executed in a stamp paper, and all three needs to sign in digital mode. Post which, when we are going to get a confirmation from the depository about admission of the fund into the security system. And after that, there is a payment of fee involved. I'll talk about this in a detail. What is the fee structure to be paid to the depositories, etc. But the payment of the charges to the depository is prior to admission. And once you complete all these informations, that's when you are going to get an ISIN for your units. Now, couple of things to highlight over here is the ISINs are normally taken in a share class level. There are instances where there's a series accounting, and specifically which is mentioned in the PPM. That's where you will be able to get the ISIN on a subclass level. And a couple of additional information on this is face value, paid up value, the nature of treatment of the units. All this needs to be the same to allocate a particular ISIN in a particular category. That's where you need to be mindful of the uniqueness of the instrument which you are going to admit in Demat. So when you receive an ISIN, that's when you are actually ready to dematerialize your existing units or allocate any fresh units into Demat mode. So when we are having a Demat account, that's when we will be able to communicate this information to the investor, asking them to give their Demat account details, CML copy, etc. I will talk about it in a later stage. For the time being, I will move on to the required documents for admission. These are the documents required for both the depositories for getting your fund admitted in the depository system. There is a master creation form application, certified copy of the MOA, AOA, trust deed, etc. depending on the structure of your AIF, certified copy of the PPM, certified copy of last annual report. These all are depending on the structure. Again, certified copy of board resolution, certified copy of list of authorized signatories as per the board resolution, certified copy of SEBI registration certificate, net worth certificate from a PCA, and the tripartite agreement, which I already mentioned, which needs to be signed by all the three parties digitally, certified copies of PAN and GST certificate of the investment manager or the trust. So some of these documents, depending on the structure, they will allow the investment manager also to provide the documents where the AIF is not having that particular document. Talked about the fee structure. There's a basic fee structure of depositories. When I'm saying this, there's only a caveat saying, I know these structures are currently ongoing structure from the depository. This can be changed depending on the circulars issued by the depository. There is a one-time fee to be paid to NSDL and CDSL at rupees 15,000 per depository. And an annual custody fee. There is a structure on annual custody fee on a slab basis. Up to 5 crore, it is 9,000, 5 to 10 is 22,500, etc. Corporate action also attracts some fees. Corporate action, when I need to say, like I'll talk about corporate action in a detailed way in coming slides, but just an introduction to corporate action. If you want to credit or debit any units into your Demat segment, you need to do that through a corporate action. And corporate action is a particular event, not the number of records. So it is not that you have 1,000 investors or 900 investors where you are doing a corporate action, and it is called one corporate action, not multiple, but the charges are depending on the number of records involved. up to 100 recurs is 1250 for NSDL and 300 per corporate action for CDSL. So this is the fee structure, and there is a data validation charges are involved in the prior to the corporate action. When you take a demat account detail from the investor, you need to validate that with the depository. There is a charge involved in that. Now, up to this, we covered the admission process. When you receive a particular ISIN number in a share class, that's the time when you can write a communication. If you see, there is a circular from both the depositories dated 9th of November 2023 provided a particular SOP for conversion of existing AIF units. Now, last time when we were discussing about Demat, the entire picture was not clear whether the depositories or SEBI is going to allow us to do a Demat through a corporate action, or individual investor needs to go to the depository and submit a Demat request, etc. Now that particular confusion is clear now. Depository has come out with a circular and conversion of existing physical units into a Demat mode through a corporate action. And the main demand from the AIF industries, as we have already paid the stamp duty, we won't be paying a stamp duty for this particular purpose of conversion of Demat. And both the regulators are agreed on this, and there's a specific format of documents are already received by all the RTAs and AIF, and now the entire system is ready to convert the physical units into Demat, and we have already successfully done it for almost 10 odd funds. So this entire process involves, now the circular says when the AIF is writing to an investor to submit his client master list along with a CRF conversion request form, which is prescribed by the IM. So practically CRF is a document where you mention the detail of the entire share class, number of units, ISIN number obtained, and names, etc., along with that number of units he is holding, and asking for a Demat account detail, DPID, client ID. Now, this particular CRF is not a very strict document, but it is need to be obtained from the investor and kept it at your end. Depository is not calling for this document at their end. Along with the client master, you can retain this document. This can be a digital communication, goes to the investor at their registered email ID, and you can get this form collected, and the Demat account and the CML can be collected. Along with this, all the list of unit holders, along with their number of units held by them, payment of corporate action fee to NSDL, CDSL. In previous slide, I said how, what is the fee structure for corporate action, etc. Stamp duty confirmation, you need to give an undertaking confirming that the stamp duty is already made, it is paid in the physical mode. And there is a validation process happening in this entire exercise. When you get a CML, you need to validate the names, order of names, PAN, account status, whether it is active, inactive, etc., before executing the corporate action. Otherwise, there can be rejections, there can be wrong credits, etc. So this is one area where we are saying, the process is there to validate it through a data download. We can even validate, there's a provision to validate it through the CML also. If the number of records are very few, we can do a manual verification with the CML, and if we are sure, we can avoid with the Bendum process entirely. So this is required documents for conversion of your physical units into Demat. But the circular says from 1st of April 2024, this particular route is going to change to complete Demat onboarding. That's when you need to take the CML when you are onboarding an investor. And for crediting the fresh allocations, you need to have a management resolution of allotment on a particular date. Also, the payment of stamp duty need to be made directly to the depository, depending whether the investor is having account in NSDL or CDSL. Now, one of the questions often I hear from the AIF industry is whether I need to admit it with NSDL and CDSL, because there are two depositories. Why should I incur cost for that? So if all your investor is with one of the depository and you are not seeing any cross depository transaction, you can open it with one of the depository, and later on, whenever the time or need arises, you can admit it to the other depository, because the ISIN number is going to be a unique number which going to be admitted later on by the other depository. Now, other than this, I talked about the allotment corporate actions, and for the redemption of units, you need to go for a redemption of units, which will be a debit corporate action. Only the mode of execution of the document is going to be changed, because the normal corporate action you will be doing it for credit, and here we will be doing it for debit. So the nature of corporate action changes, but the form remains the same. and the data release also remains the same at our end. Now, I've covered the corporate admissions, corporate actions, for last 5 to 6 months. We are regularly interacting with the industry. We are getting a lot of queries, questions from the AIFs, how to go about it. We have tried to summarize it in a way like the most number of queries was about these areas, and that's why we thought we will put it in a summarized way to give it to the audience over here so that these queries even before you raise it to us, it can be answered. So, there was a query from everyone, like there is a concept of having a core RTA, then some of the AIFs are having this particular onboarding as well as, fund accounting done by a different agency who's not a SEBI registered RTA, whether they can do the services of only providing the connectivity RTA with KFin. This is very much possible. We are doing it for some of the funds as of now, but mindful that this particular process where you need to align your existing systems, the maintenance of database accordingly to accommodate the information getting from the depository as well as the information which you need to give to the depository when you're doing an allocation. What are the important details to be verified while collecting the Demat account of the details? I've touched upon this. The Demat account needs to be active, non-PMS Demat account, names, PAN numbers, order of the names needs to be the same. One of the important point over here is post Demat, all the details like a bank account or a nomination will be considered as registered in Demat account. This needs to be informed to the investor when you're communicating about the collection of Demat account detail as well as CML, because the CML will be having the bank account detail and the nomination in CML. It will be better for the investor to identify if they have specifically asked for a bank account or a nomination in a particular AIF investment. It will be advisable for them to align that with the Demat account, or you'll have to consider whatever is there in the Demat account is going to override the data what you are already maintaining. Stamp duty payment for corporate action, I explained. For physical to Demat corporate action, because the stamp duty is already paid in physical mode, you need to confirmation saying that the stamp duty is already been paid. But for a fresh allocation, stamp duty need to be calculated depository wise, and the same needs to be paid in advance in a designated Demat account for an AIF. So when the depository admit an AIF, there is a two virtual bank account opened with both the depositories assigned for corporate action fee, annual custody fee on one account and stamp duty in a different account. So these corporate action fees as well as the stamp duty payments needs to be made in advance to this respective designated bank accounts. One of the questions when I do a corporate action, when the investor will see these units in their Demat account, or there is a couple of connected questions whether the value of the units, current value of the units, like linking with NAV, is going to happen in the Demat account. Answer to this is normally when you release a corporate action, when I execute a document, you execute the document with depository. When they allow us to release the data, when we are releasing a data, we are using a release. When I'm doing a data release, I'm making a field called execution date, which will be normally T+1 from the CA approval date from the depository, and on the execution date, that is T+1 from the release of data, the investor will be able to see the units in their Demat account with the credit date of that execution date. Post Demat, how the transfer will happen? Post units transferred into Demat, the transfer as per SEBI circular, now the depositories are come out with an option of any transfer that seller Demat, the Demat account where the seller is having a Demat account, that the particular depository participant, you need to give a DIS, which is a delivery instruction slip. This particular instruction will flow to the investment manager through an online portal by the depository, and post approval from the IM, the particular transaction has been considered and the transfer is effected in the system. So this also there is a clarity now. There were some doubts about how to do this. Now, of late, we got the communication from depositories confirming that this particular route is clear, and there is an issue portal for the depository where every IM is having a user ID password to log in. There were very, critical question of pledge. Now, what if a pledge is registered at the physical level with the investment manager? Whether this pledge can be communicated when we are converting a physical to Demat unit? Answer is no. This information is not communicated through a conversion route. only the units will be credited into the demat account. You need to, if you are having some cases of already registered pledge at your end, what you need to do is you will have to inform the lender as well as the investor, saying that because of this requirement of demat, now we need to dematerialize the units into the depository system, and this is the demat account detail with which DP it is having, and the lender needs to approach that DP and reinitiate the pledge in the system. That's when the pledge will later on will reflect in the demat account detail. So these are the some of the questions what we were having, and I will talk about our team. Most of you must have already interacted these team members. Mr. Nilesh, who's a couple of them are like Nilesh and Pankaj or ex-NSDL who joined KFin, and they are having the process knowledges. Tanveer and Vinay, who takes care of corporate actions and other activities. So I want the audience to know their names, and then it will be making you for an easy conversation with these team members who are very experienced, and already the numbers you have seen, we have almost 8,000 plus ISINs we have got in all these 3 to 4 months of time when the SEBI circulars received. So request all the attendees, wherever there is a queries or whether it is admission or corporate action, you may reach out to any of these team members, or I'm available. Madhu is available always. We can have this communication. I will talk about this second topic what Madhu talked about. There was a SEBI board meeting on 25th of November 2023, post which there was a press release issued by SEBI. In the press release, there was a reference to a particular activity where AIF is involved. This press release talks shall be held in dematerialized form. Now, this is again connected to some of the other regulator instructions, like MCA recently has come out with making 100% demat for private limited companies. For public limited companies, the demat is already mandated by MCA. Now, SEBI has made when an AIF is investing in any of the instruments in the security market, it needs to be in a dematerialized form. So on this, I just want to add up that why we put this particular topic over here is because KFin is a Cat 1 registrar. So our one of our business vertical which deals about all these corporate actions as well as managing the equity, debt, etc. So a quick recap about KFin. I'm aware most of you must have already interacted with our team, and you know what KFintech is and what's the strength of KFintech. So this is one of the largest QRTA. We are a Cat 1 SEBI registered RTA. We service both unitized as well as other securities in the market. When I talk about unitized, we do mutual funds, AIFs, InvITs, REITs, etc. In the other side of the business, we do equities, bonds, debentures, commercial papers, certificate of deposit, securitized instruments, etc. So these areas, whenever any of you are investing, that's when it needs to be mandatorily in a demat mode. And we have a separate team handles. And it's again, Madhu has introduced me saying, I have a team separately working on this entire field of procuring ISINs for equity, debts, bonds, commercial papers, etc. So the team is placed at Mumbai, and we are regularly in touch with the depository to make you a better experience and get these things done. So that's one more request to the entire audience, saying whenever there is a requirement of such cases where your investment needs to be converted, your investee companies wants to know that who can provide the service, we are there to help you out to cover this entire aspect. With that, I just want to highlight the team members over here, Mr. Sameer Sheikh, and Henry Fernandez and Rajesh Bhattacharya. Any three of them can be approached, or you can refer the same to Madhu or me also. So that's it from my end, Madhu. Over to you.
Thanks, Satish. So that was, a very sharp presentation, I would say. You covered the very valid points specific to, so we have a lot of newer AIFs who have joined us who still have to go through the admission process. And at the same time, we have today joining us, I could see that a lot of larger clients have also joined who have already gone through the process with us. So I think you brought together both aspects, the initial journey of getting the ISIN admissions done, and then the continued journey of corporate actions. You also covered, Satish, you also covered key questions that we receive, from our clients. and what are the solutions or what are the clarifications for those key questions as well. You highlighted our team strengths, and hopefully we will be able to offer continued and strong services in this space to all our clients. So thanks for that. I can see that a lot of questions have come in during the session itself. So I'm going to just read out a few, Satish, and maybe you can just help in clarifying or answering those questions. For those who have questions and haven't yet typed in the Q&A chat box or in the chat box, please do so. We'll be happy to answer your questions right now. Okay, so Ankur has a query. Is there clarity on CDSL's cost for Bendum or data validation? Are they going to charge based on AUM of fund or in some other manner?
Yes, Ankur, thank you to take it in a public forum. This question, I have already heard it from you. So yes, the circular talks about the fee structure on a slightly higher side for CDSL on a Bendum charges. And because they are charging not on the number of records, but they consider this particular instrument, they unfortunately consider an equity side. And what we do in IPOs, particular issue size-based validation charges is what they have meant. We have made our representation. We are in discussion with the depository. We will soon come out with an answer for your question. But yes, we know this is a burning question because this will affect a lot of costing. We are discussing with them. Hopefully, we will be able to close it very soon.
Thanks, Satish. So our next question is from Jitendra Motwani. Any update on the pledge process for existing and new allotments? And how will the IM control the invocation process?
Fresh allocation, I talked about in the presentation itself. This is a question I have heard a lot of times from the AIF industry, and that's where I have taken it with the depository. The pledge needs to be initiated with the depository participant, which the investment manager through an approval system, in the issuer portal provided by the depository system. Post approval is when the pledge is going to get registered. Now, the second part of your query, where you said what will happen when somebody invoke the pledge registered and when the lender try to transfer the units into their account, depository, as per the current system and the entire market, depository is saying when a pledge is registered with the DP, the DP knows that who's having the pledge, and when the default is done, then that is when the lender is having an upper hand, and they don't want to put this approval to again going for an approval from the investment manager is not desirable in the system, and which is not available also as of now in any other units or equity which is under pledge, because it's beyond anybody's approval because the lender is having an upper hand on the transaction. So what they are saying is, at the time of invocation of a pledge, and it amounts to a transfer, but that transfer won't flow into the system for an approval. So indirectly, they are saying they are not allowing the investment manager to delay the process of lender to get their recovery process by transferring the units. So this is what I had the interaction with the depositories. Happy to join for a joint discussion along with the industry, with the depository, to take this to a conclusion. Jitendra.
Thanks, Satish. So we have a little bit of a technical question from Rakesh Kar. Got to know from depository that the units in depository system can be issued up to 3 decimal places. So in case an AIF already issued physical units in 4 decimal places, then how can we take care of that?
Rounding off is the only option available. We have done this in a couple of AIFs, who maintain 4 digits and 5 digits. Because the depository system doesn't have more than 3 digits in the system, that's where the difficulty is there. They are not accommodating, or their system is not designed for that. So it is like they don't have a provision to increase that decimals, because the structure of the database has already been decided. So they can't change it for one particular instrument. That's why they are having this limitation. This rounding off needs to be done at our end, and we need to inform this to the unit holders, because when you are dematting, you will be rounding it off to the 3 digit, 3 decimal system.
Okay, thanks for that information, Satish. So we have a question from Ankit. In cases where the units are still not converted to demat, as the corporate action is not yet done, in such cases, if the fund receives a redemption request, so how can that be processed?
Redemption request currently, whichever is not dematerialized, can be processed in physical. There is no corporate action to be executed with the depositories for this purpose. You are only admitted the units into the depository system. You are not dematerialized it. So if the redemption is happening in physical before you dematting the units, you can do it at your backend and whenever you are doing a demat, you remove that units from your unit master and give the credit for the rest of the units. And we have done it in SBI Cap Ventures.
So we have a related question, Satish, to one of our earlier questions regarding transfer requests. So the question here is, in case of pending transmission or transfer requests, how the demat will be processed? In this case, can we continue to pay stamp duty to the RTA?
If the transfer pending, you talked about pending transfer and pending transmission. Until unless you dematerialize the units into depository system, the stamp duty for transfer needs to be done through the RTA. The moment you dematerialize the units, the stamp duty function goes to the depository participant, not to the depository for a transfer or transmission. For fresh allocation, the depository will collect it. So as an investor, you go to some DP and try to transfer your units. That is where the stamp duty is collected. And when you go for a transmission also, it happens the same way. So the system of demat is totally, from initiated in the beginning from the depository participants end. But for fresh allocation, the stamp duty is collected by the depository. I think what I understand from the question is the same. And in case if it's not clear, you can re-raise the same either directly with us or on the.
Thanks, Satish. So I can see we have a few fees related questions, and you had covered a particular slide on the fees, on the depository fees as well. So there are two questions on the fees. Will the annual fees be collected at start of the financial year or at the end of the financial year? So that's one question.
Sorry. Annual fee is collected at the time of admission on a pro rata basis by the depositories for the immediate financial year, and next year onwards it will be collected in advance. I hope that answers.
Vikas is asking, what are the charges for ISIN creation and any annual recurring charge for the same? So I'll take this, Vikas. So Satish has highlighted the depository fees. And there is an RTA fee also that will be, charged for the service for the admission, maintenance, and the corporate actions. So you can reach out to us, Vikas, and we'll be able to help you out with that. Is the bank account linked with Demat account, or should it be the same as the remittance account in case of NRIs?
Bank account in the Demat account needs to be considered for any distribution back to the investor. It can be different from the account where the initial funding has happened, but it has to be linked with the bank account, a Demat account at the time of any distribution happens.
So we have a couple of questions on stamp duty. You already covered that in your presentation, Satish. But for clarity, I will just repeat that question. For fresh physical issuance of units between November 1st, 2023 and now, where stamp duty is paid to RTA, how will the conversion take place? Is the stamp duty required to be paid again to NSDL? So Satish had covered this, saying that there will be no dual payment. So Satish, if you can just walk us through that again very quickly.
Whatever units you already allocated in physical, you can make till the deadline as per the circular. You can make the payment through RTA in physical mode itself. And when you are dematting this through a conversion process of corporate action, you can give an undertaking saying that you have already made the stamp duty payment. So all these physical allocations, what you did, needs to be considered as a conversion corporate action, where there is an exemption of payment of stamp duty by giving an undertaking. I hope that clears.
Thanks, Satish. So here we have a question on the transfer of units again. Okay, so there were two questions I saw. One was, how will you transfer between the units between the two depositories? Okay, and once the units are dematerialized, how will the transfer happen from one investor to the other as well? So between investors,
I can connect both the questions and give a single answer. You talked about how the transfer happens from one investor to other investor. It needs to be through off-market delivery instruction slip, which needs to be given to the transferor's Demat account DP. So there is a clear instruction given by the depositories in this regard, and that particular instruction needs to be gone to the DP who is having this demat account. And if it is the transferor and transferee belongs to two different depositories, then it needs to be a interdepository delivery instruction slip. So when you open a demat account, you normally get both these documents, one a DIS booklet and a interdepository booklet.
Thanks, Satish. There's a question on CRF form as well. So we'll try to take as many questions as possible. In case we are unable to answer your question for any reason, I'm going to type in our email ID, and you, most of you have our numbers. Satish has shared the numbers as well on the screen. So please do reach out in case your question is unanswered or you have any further queries on that particular discussion. So regarding CRF, whether CRF is mandatorily submitted to RTA, conversion of units or instruction from AIF containing details of investor would suffice. So I'll break it up. Sorry, Satish, I think I read it all together. Whether the CRF is mandatory to be submitted to RTA, or conversion of units or instruction from AIF containing details of investors should suffice.
It should suffice. We are not collecting the CRF from the AIF for the purpose of conversion of demat, and no the depository is collecting this. What we want the database when, either if we are having a core RTA operations, our team does the validations, verifications, etc. But if you are only providing a connectivity service to a particular AIF where we require the database only, the rest of the things needs to be maintained by the IM, as their permanent records.
Thanks, Satish. Can we admit securities or classes where units are not yet issued, but we may issue units under that class in the future? This is what I understand from this. This is a question from Pranav. Pranav, I hope I got your question right. So if the units are not allocated yet, Satish, can we still admit those securities or classes to the depositories?
A tricky one. Couple of instances, yes, the depository allows, and there is again a difference between NSDL and CDSL. CDSL and for there is no unit allocation has happened. NSDL has considered this only that there is once you open ISINs, there are certain critical information which you need to give to the depository, which you will make it as not applicable as of now, and then later on amend that through a separate form. So that window is open with NSDL. They are given this in certain cases where the PPM is open and which allows the investment manager to allocate as much as classes in a particular fund. So, but CDSL is very reluctant on this. So there is a difference between both the depositories in this aspect. They are allowing only to come to them when the allotment is happening, or at least with a tentative allotment date and numbers.
Our next question is from Pratik Kothari. Funds for which ISIN is received, but conversion from physical to demat is pending or still in process. In this scenario, what are the timelines available in case any? So first, he's asking for the timelines for the corporate action or the conversion of units from physical to demat. Also, what if investor is not willing to open a demat in holding pattern as already with AIF? So the holding pattern between the AIF and the demat account are not matching. In that case, what needs to be done? Satish, you're on mute.
I put myself on mute because there's a question to SEBI. I think my screen is visible. The circular is very clearly indicated that latest by 30th April 2024, all the units need to be dematerialized. Demat account, opening a demat account is a mandatory requirement in India to demat that unit. So if your investor is not having a demat account or not ready to demat, then the answer, that either you'll have to redeem that units and allow him to take the money out, or may ask them to mandatorily open a demat account. Without a demat account, this is not possible. I hope that answers.
So also additionally, Pratik wants to know that about the holding pattern, right? So between the DP as well as the demat account and the AIF units, right? So if the holding pattern is not matching, what needs to be done?
Holding pattern is not same. See, there is a provision to demat it through a collection of a transposition form in a traditional way of demat. In corporate action, the responsibility lies on the IM. So it amounts to a transfer. So whether you are transferring it and then doing a demat is the question. Like, are you accommodating a transfer prior to align the names? Because the title holder changes. So if it is A and B holds in physical in your record and the Demat account is B and A, so the primary holder is changing and his PAN is going to be accounted for all the purposes in that way. So it's purely a governance stand. Depository have an open route in this because they are saying the Demat, this particular conversion route when they have taken, they have introduced the corporate action just to avoid every investor go to DP and then submit a Demat request. In the other event, if you are going for a Demat route and give a Demat request to the depository participant, even the depository participant allow this kind of a transaction by taking a transposition form at their end. Most of you must have done it in equity or bonds anywhere when you are dematting it. So it is ideal to stick to the pattern what currently we are on at the time of onboarding. And in future, when some investor is coming, it will be ideal to onboard in the same name, as though there is no scope, like, at the time of a fresh allotment, it is directly goes to Demat. So whatever is there in the Demat, you'll have to take it in that structure.
So we have a lot more questions. We'll take a next couple of questions, 2 or 3 questions, Satish. So there's a question from Azim. In case of details pending from few investors belonging to different classes, can corporate action be initiated or dematerialization of units for that investor whose data is received? So
Yes,
we've
absolutely.
received. Yeah.
Absolutely. We can do that partially. Only the thing, your system should be able to identify what is released and what is not released. Otherwise, there will be a double credit to the investor if something happened, because you are not doing 100%. So in the interim period, you will be having some holders with the physical holding and some with the Demat holding. So the reconciliation needs to be very clear, and you need to ensure that once you credit some units, you should not attempt with the credit. Otherwise, it will be a double credit for that. And when it is done in Demat, to rectify that, it's going to be quite tough. You were asking some more annex to the questions.
Yeah, so I can see that there are a few concerns about NRI investors not having Demat accounts, and the requirement for them to be physically present here. There's another question where US investors are facing challenges for opening Demat account due to complexity with tax compliances and reporting laws. So what is your guidance, Satish? Because it could be a little difficult for overseas investors.
This is particularly not an area where I understand,
that,
Madhu.
So
the
this is
problem
something
is
you
like,
need to...
yeah. So problem is that, what best you need to, one question I have a kind of an answer. I can say 75% of that question can be answered, saying that there are a couple of DPs who are present in that, outside India. Whether some of the foreign banks who do the depository services in India, where they can get this done. And that is how most of the foreign investors in equity and bonds in India are having a Demat account. There are companies who are having foreign promoters in India. They need to mandatorily hold the equity in Demat. So there it is done through some of the same banks who's having presence in the country of the investor and India. So there are a couple of such banks who operates in Demat segment in India. You can reach out to them and try to get this opened. If there is some tax restrictions or other things are there, then this particular mandatory Demat circular of SEBI is going to get affected, right? You'll have to comply with this. You'll have to comply with that. The both way, if you want to do, then there's only one answer, because I don't think SEBI is going to waive out any such instances of holding the units in physical in India. So I'm sure industry forum is taking it seriously with SEBI and getting an answer much before the deadline, a second deadline of 30th of April. So some of the critical questions what we are coming out from this discussion, we will try to inform this to the various AIF industry forums so that we can together and the industry forum together along with depositories, we can take it to SEBI once again before the next deadline, so that some answer can be come out of that. I'm sure some of the industry forum members are part of this event, or or Madhu, you may be knowing some of them. So definitely we can take this to a separate representation. I'm sure a couple of representation are gone earlier when the 500 plus mandatory before the mandatory deadline. That's where that particular relaxation of dematerialization avoided in that circular. So we need to push it again to the regulator and see what they are saying about this.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Satish. So I think more or less we've covered the gist of all the questions. I am putting an email ID here in the chat box for everyone's benefit. In case you have any further questions, you can reach out to us, or you can write to us at contact.aif@kfintech.com. Okay, so I put that in the chat box. So I would like to extend a note of gratitude to each and all who have joined this call today. I hope it was of value to you, and we will continue to engage and keep such webinars, knowledge webinars, as and when required. So do stay in touch with us to take things forward, and thank you again for joining this call today. Thanks, Satish.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.